Okay, let's open with the word of prayer this morning. Father, thank you so much for the allowing us to live at such an exciting time. Pray that you will open our ears and give us hearts and minds to understand today. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, today I'm going to talk about reprieve over, situation critical. Now, I sometimes get accused of making titles up maybe for clickbait or something like that, and I really don't do that. I just do that because I think having Prophecy Update would be a very boring title every if I did it Sunday after Sunday. But, there really was a lot of things that happened this week that I think do play into the prophetic biblical prophecy end times scenario that's going to unfold, that is unfolding in front of our eyes. I usually on Saturday, with the way things happen during the course of the week, I get these emails from people about, so what's today? Is it going to be 3 hours today? Because there were a lot going on. And so I try to take what I think are the major themes of all these things that seem to be converging as we get closer and closer to the end. And boy, is this one cover from Foreign Policy 5 or 6 years ago now, World Disrupted, seemed to be more and more true each week. So I'm going to cover some things that are going on, put some of them in context of Scripture, and sometimes I don't always refer to the Scripture because I assume that I just assume that the people here that listen every week have some sort of basic frameworks to go from. So I will make reference to a couple specific scriptures today, though. But so here's the first one. These reports, the Center for Disease Control, the CDC, came out with a big report this week on drug-resistant infections. And it was, at least in the mainstream media, it was front page, I think, in the Wall Street or the New York Times, Washington Post, and elsewhere. And this is the title of the report: Antibiotic-Resistant Threats in the United States, 2019. Now, was 6 years ago that they released their first report on this. We have lived in what has been known as the golden age of antibiotics. When penicillin came out, penicillin worked on the major bacterial infections that were around at that time. The problem is that as time goes on, there are resistant strains of bacteria that develop in response. They're not killed off by, they're resistant to the various antibiotics. So as time goes on, there's this race to keep ahead of the resistant bacteria that keep appearing. And they're most prevalent a lot of times in hospitals and institutions such as that, because that's where they're used the most. There's also antibiotics used in livestock raising. All of these lead to the growth of bacteria that is resistant to these antibiotics. And now we're at the stage where there are a number of diseases out there that are resistant to antibiotics. So here's a sort of an example, a complex web. And so what happens is, many years ago, I had a case involving a very bad infection. I was representing a doctor in a malpractice case, and I was able to learn a lot from infectious disease people about how these, especially hospital-borne nosocomial infections, operate. So there is this, everything is kind of connected now. You get on a plane, you might have somebody there who's got a cold, you eat out, people touch things with their hands. It's almost impossible to protect yourself from picking up some of these infections. And so here's one that's developed, and I mentioned this a while back. This one is pretty much limited to hospitals and nursing homes right now, Candida auris, but there are a number of things that they talk about in this CDC report that are urgent threats. They're worldwide global threats. In fact, they actually have a map for the different strains of C. aureus, Candida aureus, that have emerged around the world. And it's a big problem because you get these infections and there's no drug that's going to help you fight off the infection. When I had an infection this past summer, I was in the hospital on IV antibiotics for a while, and they tell you that, these antibiotics will kill most strains of bacteria, and we hope that it's going to cover the bacteria that you likely have that's causing your infection. By the way, this can also fry your kidneys as they're hanging up these bags of IV antibiotics. And so you're in this situation where you don't know if you don't take it, things won't go well for you. If you do take it, they may not go well for you. And as I like to say, based on my research, I have found that the death rate from all causes is around 100%. I'm pretty confident in saying that. But anyway, so this is a problem, but this plays into Bible prophecy. Because Jesus in Matthew chapter 24, verse 7 said, "For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in divers places." And he mentioned pestilences. And we know that there is this time coming in the end where there will be pestilences all over the place. So when you look at a map like this, which is just tracking one of the antibiotics, or one of the strains of bacteria that's resistant to all treatment, you can see that it is pestilences right now in diverse places, in different places around the world. It's also referenced in Revelation chapter, I think it's actually chapter 6. I have my slide incorrect. "And when he had opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth beast say, 'Come and see.' And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. And power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth, to kill with the sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth." Now, a number of people have, and this is the way that I lean and the way to interpret this and fit Revelation chapter 6 in with Matthew chapter 24, is that the seals of Revelation are referenced, at least the first number of seals are referenced in Matthew chapter 24. They're parallel passages. So the fourth seal, I think, does relate to what Jesus was talking about in Revelation chapter 7. Now, the question always is, and there's a lot of dispute, if you study Bible prophecy and you read a lot of different authors, one of the things you find is that everybody has an opinion. And everybody's pretty sure that their opinion is right. And I will confess to you that I believe it is it can be very confusing to people, because there's all these different voices out there chattering about how they think it's going to unfold. And I have my views, but I try not to be too dogmatic about them, because I think that things are going to happen so quickly in the end times that you need to be able to adapt. I always say keep your charts in an editable format, because you may have to change them as things unfold. And I think we we see that happening. I mean, I cannot begin to tell you the number of times I have a conversation with a Bible prophecy conference speaker or an author, and it almost always comes up now. I can't believe I'm seeing what I'm seeing. And I just didn't expect it that way. So people have written about this for a long time, but things have changed in the world. You may not have noticed things have changed in the world over the past week quite a bit. So exactly how this is all going to play out, I think we can talk about it, we can discuss it, we can argue about it, but the best evidence of how it's going to unfold is when it actually does unfold. So I'm pro-prophecy, I'm in favor of a lot of things in Bible prophecy, like rapture and second coming and millennial kingdom. I'm all in favor of those. I'm pro-rapture, I guess you could say. And I'm all for it. But the other thing is, this is an example of where there's a difference in interpretation. Now, I think probably the majority of people say power was given to them over the fourth part of the earth to kill with the sword and with hunger and death and with beasts of the earth. And so the common teaching is that, that means that a fourth of the earth is going to die. The seal opens and a fourth of the world dies. And I first of all, I don't think that that's a correct assessment. I'm not sure that verse says that he's given power over the fourth part of their power over the fourth part of the earth. But I don't know that necessarily in power, ultimate power, to the point where you can kill people. But I don't know that that means that 1/4 of the world dies. Now, there are good people that will disagree very, very strongly with me. And I also don't think it's a situation where the fourth seal opens and immediately or very shortly a quarter of the world dies. I don't know that that's the case. I believe that these seals open progressively and their impact reaches a sort of a peak or a crescendo. That's just my personal view. And you can disagree with me, and you can be wrong if you want. But just be humble about it. And like I am, I'm amazed at my humbleness at times. And so it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But here is an example where, 40, 50 years ago, antibiotics came on the scene, and everybody was excited, like, we have now solved this problem of infections. And there was a golden age where those antibiotics worked, and now there's a lot of diseases that are coming on that we don't really have a cure or treatment for. And so when the CDC releases their report, in their report, they are telling people that there are 35,000 people in the United States that die from these infections every year right now. That's a lot of people. So and we live in a place where we have pretty good health care and access to health care, but imagine in other places where they don't have access to this, it's a huge problem. So I do think it fits into the prophetic pattern is what I'm trying to say. Well, here's an interesting story. This is from local here. The Ohio House has passed the Religious Liberties Bill. It's actually the Student Religious Liberties Bill. And what this is to do is to protect students with regard to their religious liberties. Now, it doesn't mean, but here's what's happened. For example, here's Channel 6, who has put out, this is the headline that they use, Ohio House passes bill allowing student answers to be scientifically wrong due to religion. That's not what the bill says, and that's not what the bill does. But I know from talking to some people, this is a Democratic talking point. And they have just put this out. Hang on a second here. I don't know why my phone turned on there. I wonder where that sound was coming from. What a rude person is playing a YouTube video during my YouTube video. How dare they? What? Who? Oh, yeah. I have a newer phone, and it's very sensitive. I mean, I'm constantly dialing things, and Siri's always talking to me like, what did you really say? So one time I said, shut up, Siri, and Siri responded, don't be rude. You're not being nice. I'm Siri, I'm not joking. So anyway, but this is a made up talking point, and the media just parrots it like it's fact. In fact, here's the actual Channel 6 local report.
Weighing in on how public schools can teach things like evolution. The House today passed the Student Religious Liberties Act. Long story short, students cannot be penalized if their work is scientifically wrong, just as long as the reasoning is because of their religious beliefs. Instead, students are graded on substance and relevance. Every Republican in the House supported the bill. It now moves to the Republican-controlled Senate.
And that's how it's reported, even though I don't believe it's accurate. It hasn't passed yet. It has to pass the Senate. It probably will pass the Senate since the Republicans control both that, and we actually have a sort of a real Republican as governor now, as opposed to the one that we had before, who was not claimed to be a Republican, but really isn't. So here's another report that I think this all plays into this prophetic scenario. I mean, we talk a lot about Romans chapter 1, that God gives them over to a reprobate mind. Now, I did a lot of research on this issue and a related issue that I'll talk about in a minute this week. And to be honest with you, I can't play for you the videos that they're using in schools for like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old children. I cannot play them here. It's shocking. Now here is what GLAAD, that's a LGBTQ advocacy organization, they have a report analyzing where we are on TV, looking at LGBTQ people in roles on TV, streaming media, et cetera, and they count them up to make sure the percentages are right, that sort of thing, so the people aren't being discriminated against. There's some interesting things in that report. And of course, I'll show you what they say. This is what they say. I'm not saying I agree with this, but this is what they report. GLAAD and Harris Poll's Accelerating Acceptance study show that 20% of Americans aged 18 to 34 are LGBTQ. Now, I know immediately what's going to happen is I'm going to get emails saying, no, it's 1%, it's 3%, it's 10%. My personal view is that it used to be those numbers. I think it's changing, my friends. I think we need to understand this. Now, I think this is probably overinflated, but I am telling you that when you look at statistics, for example, transgender, gender dysphoria, people wanting to change their gender, sex, except for where they've done studies in England, there has been an increase of like 200, 300, 400, 500, 600% in the last couple years of people in this age category wanting to change their sex or gender. There are clusters, particularly they're finding like in colleges, women, all of them are claiming to be non-binary or transgender in particular groups that interact on campus. So I don't think we should be too dismissive of their claim that it's 20%. It's probably overinflated, but we know that it's going to be like the days of Lot and the days of Noah. And when you read what was going on in Sodom in Genesis, it does appear that it was a pretty big, pretty pervasive problem, a pretty pervasive issue. So 20% of Americans age 18 to 34 are LGBTQ. And it says, and this applies across demographics. The General Social Survey from NORC at the University of Chicago this summer found that 23% of black women in America 18 to 34 identify as bisexual. And the university's Gen Forward survey reports that 1 in 5 Latinx millennials are LGBTQ. Those are shocking numbers. But what do we expect? In Columbus, Ohio, we have 500,000 people show up for the Gay Pride Parade out of a population of maybe close to 2 million in the whole metro area. What do you expect? Here's what they also say. So this year we are issuing a new challenge. GLAAD is calling on the industry, the media industry, to ensure that 20% of series regular characters on primetime scripted broadcast series are LGBTQ by 2025. Now, what do you think, based on the way the media reacts to these kind of demands, what do you think they're going to do? Do you think the media is going to cave, by and large? Okay, so just get used to it, I guess is what I would say. Further, we would challenge all platforms, media, social media, streaming, to make sure that within the next 2 years, half of LGBTQ characters on every platform are people of color. While broadcast has actually hit this mark 2 years in a row, cable and streaming have yet to reach this goal. These 2 steps are key moves towards ensuring that entertainment reflects the world in which it is created and the audience who consumes it. Okay, so look, how about this? 20% of all characters in media be conservative evangelicals. I mean, is that, can we make that demand? Oh, you bigot. This is a cosmetology class at Willis High School down in Texas, in the Houston area. They brought in a male, whatever, he wants to play female. Oh, Miss Lynn Adonis, now we thoroughly enjoyed your company today. Laughs all day and memories we'll never forget. So thankful for you. Well, this has caused a bit of a firestorm. The parents weren't notified about this. And they said, oh, well, this person, so I don't even know what to say. He came to show them how to put on makeup. Like, there's no women available in Houston in Houston. Have you ever been to Houston and seen the hair and makeup on people? I mean, go out to the mall there on the west side off Westheimer. You'll find plenty of people that know how to apply makeup. And so parents were upset. So one of the teachers at the school, a guy named Anthony Lane, this is taken from his Facebook page. Now, he removed the post, but the screen capture thing works great on social media. First of all, I saw they had a meeting about it. This happened a few weeks ago in October. They had a meeting about it, a school board meeting, and the principal of the school got up and essentially told the parents, listen, I know better than you do. And listen what this student or this teacher says. I'm both a parent and teacher, and I have what may be a strange view when it comes to parental rights and education being viewed as a customer service industry. Our society is very sensitive when it comes to criticizing parents, and teachers are often afraid of parents because they are given so much authority. I believe that raising a child is the responsibility of the community. I didn't know Hillary Clinton had a sex change. Can I say that? I did. And that parents should not have the final say. Let's be honest, some of you don't know what is best for your kids. I have learned a ton about what is best for Ethan from his teachers, not the other way around. Parents believe they should be able to storm the school in the name of political and religious beliefs. If something happens in the school that they are morally opposed to. They forget that we make a promise to prepare children to live in a diverse world. We are not required to protect the misguided, bigoted views of their parents. If you want your children educated with your values, find a private school that will do it. The public education system is not here to serve your archaic beliefs. Now, I agree with the last paragraph. I don't know what else to say, and I know it's difficult, but I think Christian parents, and this is happening everywhere. I can show you a video, several hour video, when they were putting in a sex ed thing down in Austin, and they had 30, 40 speakers, half speaking for it, half speaking against this curriculum that they were putting in down there. And I will tell you, when the conservative people were up, as you're listening to videos, Austin ISD, you can find it on Facebook. It happened a week or two ago. The bleeps from the people that oppose the conservative speaking, they had to bleep out all this stuff because they're shouting cuss words while the conservatives are speaking. This is happening everywhere, and so I really think that people with kids in school need to really carefully consider what's going on. Because I doubt that there are a lot of great teachers, believe me. And I know there are a lot of teachers that are really upset with the way things are going. But the unions and everybody else are really in favor of it. Now, this is a commercial that I'm going to play. Maybe we can keep the sound down low. This is a commercial, I think it aired, I can't remember what country it's from. It's for Sprite. Okay, a refreshing drink. Okay, here is a commercial for Sprite. I'm only telling you that because I don't think Sprite appears in the commercial.
When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high.
Do you see what she's doing? She's having her breast browned up so she looks like a
Be
boy.
afraid of the dark. At the end of a storm, there's a golden sky and a sweet silver song of a lark. Will come
Okay, so what does that make you want to do? Buy Sprite or not buy Sprite? I'm just telling you, you don't see it, but this is what's happening. I think it might be from Ireland. So listen, so that I overstate it when I titled this Situation Critical. It's incredible. And we know what Romans chapter 1 says, that God's going to give them up to a reprobate mind. Now, this was an article from a couple weeks ago in the Wall Street Journal. And this is about St. Greta spreads the climate gospel. And I think the one thing that we need to realize is that what's being done in the name of these leftist ideas is really spreading a religion. Because it's not based on science. It's based on feelings, and it's designed, I don't know what else is, this agenda with the LGBTQ thing in schools, I don't know what it's designed to do other than to cause chaos. And I've heard non-Christian conservative media people talking about the fact that it seems like what they're trying to do is create chaos. And and we've said this, I've said this for a long time. This is exactly what they're trying to do. They're tearing down the basic fabric of society. So here's just from the article, it's been noted that the cause of addressing climate change has become something like the modern world's version of a secular religion. This is a Wall Street Journal. In much of the European, in much of Europe especially, but in sections of American society too, a kind of climate theology has replaced traditional Christianity as the ultimate source of authority over human behavior, comprising both an all-embracing teleology of our existence and a prescriptive moral code. The High Church of Environmentalism has acquired many of the characteristics of its ecclesiastical predecessor. An apocalyptic eschatology warns that we will all be consumed by fire if we don't follow the ordained rules. The notion that it is our sinful nature that has brought us to our mortal peril, from the original sin of a carbon unleashing industrial revolution to daily transgression with plastic bottles and long-haul flights, is as central to its message as it was to the Catholic Church. But repentance is near. A gospel of redemption emphasizes that salvation lies in reducing our carbon footprint. I mean, it's a great article. It's sort of satirical, but I think it makes a great point. Here's another thing that's going on. This is from the Times of London last week. Students turn against free speech amid a culture of conformity. And they have a report that came out, Academic Freedom in the UK. And what they do is they're looking at it, do you really have free speech in academics in the United Kingdom? And the answer is probably not. Douglas Murray, who has written a couple great books, and I believe Douglas Murray is, he identifies as gay. I believe he's an atheist, but I've heard him talking recently. There's a great interview of him on the Hoover Institution videos that they put out periodically within the last month or so. And he wrote a book called The Strange Death of Europe, and now he has one, The Madness of Crowds. And I think what he's written is very, very insightful as to what's going on. And even he, as I believe someone who claims to be agnostic or an atheist, has come out and said the decline of Christianity is going to destroy the world. Now, it's interesting that he gets it, but I don't think a lot of pastors do, to be honest with you. They do it, by the way, they do around here. But I see them adopting all of these leftist ideas, the critical race theory and that type of thing, and the gospel gets eviscerated. So here's what some of the findings were in this report in the UK. Fewer than half of students consistently support freedom of speech, and 2/5 favor censorship, and no platforming of controversial speakers, research has shown. We don't agree with you, you won't be invited. A higher number of women were in favor of censorship, and men were more likely to support academic freedom, polling found. Gender differences had a bigger impact on attitudes than whether respondents had backed leave or remain in the EU referendum on Brexit. So that's, and they asked some questions like, should the Conservative MP Jacob Rees-Mogg be prevented from speaking on your campus? 26 agree, 52% disagree, 22% don't know. Should Cambridge University have rescinded the controversial academic? I mean, I like the way they phrase the question. You know, they could have a leftist and he would say the respected professor, but he is the controversial academic, Jordan Peterson's fellowship. And when you add up agree and don't know, it's almost 70% say it should be revoked. So this is a problem. There's also another report that came out this week called Freedom on the Net 2019 by Freedom House. You can look that up. And it goes through and it looks at internet freedom status. So the green are free, the purple are not free, and the yellow are partly free. And then the rest probably don't have enough of an internet presence to judge. Of course, and then of course there's Greenland up there where they make it much, much bigger than it's supposed to be. Greenland is not that big. I mean, it looks as big as Africa there. and it's not. Change in freedom score, and you can see that orange and red are becoming less free. Yellow is neutral. So Iran is neutral, which is, Libya is neutral. The US is becoming less free. And Canada, I don't know. So they made it up, and they have a chart here that shows how the surveillance society is getting bad. And then they give you a chart here to show the various global rankings. The United States is this is 65 countries that they analyzed, and the United States is ranked, I think, 6th or 7th. So, now here's a good story. There's a Chester church, this is in the UK, has pulled out of a conference on Palestine featuring talks by 2 controversial anti-Jewish activists. The 2-day Palestine, yesterday, today, and tomorrow, coordinated by Interfaith for Palestine, was due to be held at St. Columbia's Church last Friday and Saturday. But after being contacted by the Northwest Friends of Israel, the church decided to cancel the meeting. One of the speakers was Stephen Sizer, who is described in the article as a vicar who was reprimanded for sharing material suggesting Israel carried out the 9/11 attacks. And he did. And I think I mentioned to you about a year ago when I was in Oklahoma at the Christ at the Checkpoint conference, Mr. Sizer sat down next to me at lunch. But we didn't really engage that much because he wanted to talk more about him. And so I just started talking to someone else who was there, but hopefully loud enough that he would hear. This is an interesting story. So now I'm going to turn to the Middle East and the things that are going on. I'm going to talk a little bit about Erdogan and Trump and Turkey and what's going on in northern Syria, northeast Syria, because it's a huge mess. But I'm going to start off with the fact that for a long, long time, Turkey, especially Turkey, but other countries as well, have wanted to get rid of the Kurds. This is a documented fact. Now, the Kurds have responded, sometimes violently. We cannot ignore that. But they are not, even though they're largely Islamic, they are not accepted in Sunni Islamic. They are not really accepted in the Sunni world because the myth is that they are descendants of jinns or genies. And therefore, they're subhuman. So Turkey will wrap itself in the mantle of being anti-terrorist to get rid of the Kurds. They're all terrorists. They're all bad. Can't trust any of them. We have to get rid of them. But Turkey has done this in multiple ways. Now, we know the invasion that took place of northern Syria. And as a result of that invasion, I believe it's 300,000 Kurds have been displaced. They're refugees now. They've had to leave their homes. In Afrin, which was in northwest Syria, controlled by Kurds, a couple 100,000 were displaced from there. It's ethnic cleansing, I guess is the only way to say it. But one of the other ways that they have done this is through water. I do not remember the name of the Turkish leader who was questioned about this once, and it was an Arab country, an oil-rich Arab country, was saying, well, you don't have the oil that we have. And the Turkish leader said, well, you can drink your oil, we'll drink our water. Because the Euphrates and Tigris rivers, which form the fertile, the basin of the Fertile Crescent, originate in Turkey. And so what Turkey has done, and this is an article in The Nation. Now, I know, please, this is The Nation is a leftist magazine. I understand that. But this article is a very good summary of what's being done by Turkey to Arabs downstream. And so they are controlling the water. And in southwest Turkey, there is a very large dam that's being built. It's in a Kurdish region in southeast Turkey, and it will displace about 80,000 Kurds, mainly Kurds. It will also inundate one of the oldest archaeological sites on the planet. And it's ready to go. It's way behind schedule. It's cost billions of dollars. By the way, this is the Ataturk Dam. By the way, this dam is on the dam that I was just talking about is on the Tigris River. This dam is on the Euphrates River in Turkey, before the Euphrates, flows down into Syria and then down into Iraq and then into the Persian Gulf. This is, and it's always difficult to figure out where the rankings of dams are, but this dam in the dam rankings is ranked fourth. So it's a huge dam. It's the Ataturk Dam. This is a picture of the dam that they're building in southwest Turkey. Now, back in 2008, in the few years leading up to 2008 and a few years after, there was a severe drought throughout the Middle East. This hit the breadbasket of Syria really hard. So, but part of it was a drought, but it was exacerbated by the fact that this dam, the Ataturk Dam, had cut water supplies significantly. And it was a very big contributing factor to the Syrian civil war. And Turkey would like to take this area back. So they're using water as a weapon. Here's a little video from National Geographic that talks about this dam, the Ilusu Dam that's being built. You can see here it's being built in southeast Turkey at this dam site. And it's going to take over. It'll generate 2% of Turkey's electricity. It will cut off a substantial portion of Turkey's or of Iraq's water in Syria, to the extent that Syria also gets water from the Tigris. And what they found is that these dams have reduced the amounts of water that go from Turkey down into Syria and Iraq by 20 to 80%. This is a village that Turkey has built. So go 1,000 miles downstream to the Mesopotamian Delta, down south of Baghdad, and what you find is that they're turning the Mesopotamian marshes down there, which were drained by Saddam, across a lot of displacement of people. It is a big problem. They're turning it into a desert. And so Turkey is doing this, and they're using water as a weapon. Now, Erdogan also gave a speech earlier this week. This is Turkish. Please turn the sound down. And he talked about what's going on with Syria, and he said, we're trying to set up this safe zone. We're going to build places here, like we did for the people down in southeast Turkey, where the Kurds are being displaced by the dam, and that type of thing. Now, Dalton Thomas, who's done great work on this, says, speaking to journalists, Erdogan defended the Syrian rebel militias he's using to rape Rojava, saying they're not terrorists, but Islamic holy warriors who were defending their land hand in hand, arm in arm, shoulder to shoulder with my soldiers. So this is Erdogan views what he's doing in northeast Syria as a jihad. This is what's going on. This is what he's doing. And it's also true that in this, that he defended he said they're not terrorists. He shows how they're, we're going to create these safe zones for these people when they go. At the same time, Turkey was also the foreign secretary of Turkey, Mevlut Cavusoglu, that guy, was saying that, look, what Israel and the US were doing, we're trying to create a terrorist state in northern Turkey. And so we're just coming down here to beat the terrorists and help our friends, the Syrians. And we know this is not necessarily true. So Erdogan also announced, and by the way, the one picture here that I was showing you, this is an American terrorist here in this picture in the upper left-hand corner who was deported by Turkey. He got to the Greece-Turkey border, and he's stuck in no man's land. Erdogan's trying to send him back to the United States. And he's deporting these terrorists from ISIS and others that he now has control over. He's deporting them to European countries and everything. This is a big problem. And he doesn't want them, he says, although he's using people that are sort of aligned with him. So this is what he's doing. He's deporting these terrorists, that type of thing. So he came to the White House this week, and he had a meeting with President Trump. So I'll play just a minute or so of that so you can hear a little bit about what went on at that meeting in the Oval Office.
After this, great honor to have you. The border is holding very well. The ceasefire is holding very well. We've been speaking to the Kurds, and they seem to be very satisfied. As you know, we've pulled back our troops quite a while ago because I think it's time for us not to be worried about other people's borders. I want to worry about our borders. We got plenty of borders to worry about. I want to thank the President for the job they've done. Again, this has been thousands of years in the process between borders, between these countries and other countries that we're involved with 7,000 miles away. So we want to worry about our things. We're keeping the oil. We have the oil. The oil is secure. We left troops behind only for the oil. And I have to just finish by saying that the President and I we've been very good friends. We've been friends for a long time, almost from day one. And we understand each other's country. We understand where we're coming from. I understand the problems that they've had, including many people from Turkey being killed in the area that we're talking about. And he has to do something about that also. It's not a one-way street. So I just want to say it's a great honor to have you both, and thank you very much.
Well, I just think that, so this is the minefield that I have today, because I do not think that was very well done. Okay? I don't know, you ought to see my inbox of everything from people telling me that this is the grandmaster chess player, Donald Trump, who's fooling everybody again. I don't know. I like the truth, and I know that from talking to people who are involved with the Kurds and ministering to them, and there's Christians that are being displaced and slaughtered. This is a typical scene in northeastern Syria now, in Kurdish regions, where they're burying these Kurdish soldiers. And Christians, they're being killed by Turkish drones. They're being killed by Russia or Syria army forces. The goal seems to be to get them out of northeastern Syria. There's a group called the Free Burma Rangers. Here is a video report from that organization.
This is 13 November, 3 miles outside of Tel Tamer. The front lines are just over these hills here, where the Free Syrian Army with Turkish support and tanks and daily airstrikes from drones has been steadily advancing all the way from the Turkish border here in this zone of displacement. Over 300,000 people displaced, over 83 dead that we've dealt with, over 140 wounded, but that's out of totals of over 200 dead, over 1,000 wounded in this area. And so the attack goes on. There's not been one day of ceasefire, not one day of shooting stopped. Just last week, Zhao Sang, my Kachin brother and the Free Burma Rangers and medic and videographer was killed by a drone strike. 6 ambulances have been taken out by drones and ambushes. Medics have been killed. Civilians chased out. This village here had over 1,000 people in it. Only 7 left. They said they dare not stay. We have our little mobile casualty collection point here set up, but even then we have to move. We had another place yesterday where we hit our vehicles. It was hit by a drone right after we left it. So there has been no ceasefire. There's only been an invasion, ethnic cleansing, murder, and death in these last few weeks. And my appeal to the United States is please pray, and to President Trump, as you're meeting with Erdogan and to Erdogan himself, God bless you both to find a solution. And the solution is go back to the border, let these people go home and work together, negotiate together who's going to live here. But the people here are the ones that decide that. And that's my appeal. And first, the very first step is a no-fly zone. These daily drone strikes have been absolutely deadly, and they need to stop. So my appeal is U.S. re-engage, say we're sorry for what we did, do a total stop on all air and air attacks. We need our planes up here to do that, and then negotiate together who's going to live in this land. This world is big enough for everybody. Dave Eubanks, God bless you.
So pray for Dave and Dalton and some of these other people who are over there ministering to people and trying to help out. It's a very difficult situation, and it also shows sort of the change in modern warfare, that these drone strikes, and it's kind of troubling. I mean, you know, they're buying, you know, you can buy drones now fairly cheaply, if you have your wife's permission. But not that I've asked, I haven't asked, so yet. But you know, things have really changed in the way that warfare is conducted. You know, and people sit in these command centers in Florida and control planes and drones under, you know, taking out pretty sophisticated attacks half a world away. It's pretty shocking. Now, Assad weighed in. He had an interview this week, and he essentially said, listen, northern Syria is Arab. It's not Kurdish. He wants to get rid of the Kurds, too. So this is a big problem. Now, one of the things that happened within the last couple of weeks was there was Israel and Jordan just celebrated 25 years after they entering into their peace agreement. As part of that peace agreement, Israel was allowed to lease some Jordanian land. It was kind of important. There was a terrorist attack there at a school that killed a number of young Israeli girls. But Jordan, they had an option to renew the lease or not, and Jordan decided not to renew the lease. So the land was handed back over to Jordanian control within the last 10 days. Now, on Jordanian TV, there is a young commentator, and she talks about this, and she says, this decision was bound to fill our hearts with joy instead of blood, but our joy is not complete. We have more to be on. She's Jordanian. We want to see a similar decision that will let us trample the peace accord between Israel and Jordan underfoot. We want to see a similar decision that will allow us to trample the gas and water agreements underfoot. We want to see a similar decision that will allow us to trample the entire Zionist entity underfoot. We don't want their representatives defiling our land, and after Bakora, we want to gouge out the eyes of the Zionists and their Arab supporters. After Gumar, will be joy when we annul the peace agreement in support of the martyrs and the Arab identity of Palestine. And I saw her Twitter account. She says, hey, this is the one that really freaked out the Zionists, man. Look at how great I am. I think the thing that you should take away is that Israel is becoming increasingly isolated in the world. This is prophetic. We know all nations will come together against Israel. Here's a little report about the Pope meeting with the imam that he signed the interfaith religious agreement with in Abu Dhabi back in February. He came to Rome either yesterday or today, and here's just a little report on that. Whoops.
Bienvenido.
A hug is the usual greeting among friends, and the sign of welcome the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar used when he saw Pope Francis. Ahmed Al-Tayeb told Pope Francis that he looked very well. The rector of Al-Azhar University visited Rome to participate in the Congress on the protection of minors, especially through digital media. The president of the Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue, Cardinal Ayuso Guijot, accompanied the Imam and his delegation to the meeting with Pope Francis. They are members of the Higher Committee of Human Fraternity that work in compliance with the document on human fraternity the Imam and the Pope signed together in February in Abu Dhabi.
Now, this is interesting. I mean, Francis is getting a lot of criticism from conservative Catholics because they're like, this guy's not, I mean, we had that pagan idol on the Vatican grounds. Somebody took that and threw it in the Tiber River. The Pope came out and said, oh, you people who are against LGBTQ agenda, I think he said you're like Hitler just this week. Did I have that right? I'm pretty sure that's what he said. This guy is not Christian. I don't think he's a leftist. That's his religion. I mean, after he went to the Holy Land back in 2013 or 2014, he had an imam come when he had Shimon Peres there and Abbas, head of the Palestinian Authority, came there, and he had an imam pray on the Vatican grounds. This is the first time this has ever happened in history. So there's a lot more going on there than what we think. So Naftali Bennett was appointed, brought his New Right Party into the coalition with Likud, just made them part of Likud, and Netanyahu gave him the interim defense minister thing. Of course, we know that this week what happened was that there were, I'm not sure exactly what happened, but I believe that there was some kind of planned attack. And Israel just said, okay, we're going to take out the head of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad group. We're just going to take him out. And they did. They launched an attack, and over the next few days, they took out him and about 24 others that were in the Palestinian Islamic Jihad leadership. They also did an attack up in Damascus where I don't think they took the guy out. I think they injured him, who was also affiliated with Palestinian Islamic Jihad, which is an Iranian-funded, supported, backed group. And the response of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, they fired about 500 rockets into Israel. Now, here's an interesting picture that somebody was able to capture with a long lens. This is a rocket launcher on the minaret of a mosque in Gaza. So they use things as shields that, and then they say, oh, you attacked our mosque. How dare you? You attacked our mosque. So this was, and the Gaza terrorist group says, well, Israel crossed the red line, and so the Palestinian Islamic Jihadists, they want a ceasefire as long as Israel will agree not to assassinate their leadership. That gets thousands of rockets to launch into Israel periodically. And this is a problem. I know but I mean, they were closing schools in Tel Aviv, and their rockets are getting a little bit better, and there's concern that they're better guided. They have a little more direction than they used to. Here's the article about the targeted a Damascus home of the Islamic Jihad leader in Damascus. And this is a problem for these people. I mean, here's an article. This is an article about rocket miracles, 2 near-deadly strikes in Israel during barrage. I embedded the video in the front page of the... So this is a street in southern Israel, and you see the rocket just come flying in there. You're driving down the street, and then boom, there's a big pothole. Now, nobody was hurt in that, but this is what the people live with, though. You're just driving down the road, and here comes a rocket. So this is a big problem. So they supposedly entered into a truce. Hamas has sort of stayed on the sidelines. They don't want anything to do with it. So that's the situation. Now, the Mansour, who is the representative of the Palestinian Authority to the UN, he gave this little, so Israel takes out a terrorist, hundreds of rockets are launched into Israel, about 30 or so people were injured, no one was killed, fortunately. So here is how the Palestinian guy described it at the UN Thursday.
While we celebrate our National Day, we bury our martyrs, the civilians, the 34 of them, the 8 children among them, and the slaughtering of a whole family, 8 of them, including few children that were killed by the Israeli occupying forces.
So that's how they're martyrs, and they did this to us. Now, also what happened at the UN this week was that, I believe this happened on Thursday, 8 resolutions condemning Israel on various grounds were adopted by the UN. 8. One day, 8 resolutions condemning Israel. Here's the votes on those. This first one is for assistance to Palestinian refugees. They also, by the way, they reinstituted UNRWA, the relief agency for the Palestinians, almost exclusively for Palestinians. That's what the U.S., and they were complaining during the debate about these resolutions was, oh, the U.S., look what the U.S. did. They cut off $300 million. We don't contribute to UNRWA anymore, which is good. Because it's being used to pay terrorists in a lot of cases. So this is the first one. But I want you to get, remember the Bible says, in the end times, all nations will gather together against Jerusalem. Now, first of all, when that prophecy is given, it's sort of like, there has to be an Israel and a Jerusalem that's important in the world. So all of that has to come into play, and it has. But look at how the world votes. 170 in favor, 2 against. The only 2 voting against this resolution were the United States and Israel. Here's another one. Persons displaced as a result of the June 1967 and subsequent hostilities. This is the right of return. They want all the Palestinians to come back. Vote 162 to 6. And the countries that voted in favor of it, there was Canada, Israel, Micronesia, Marshall Islands, United States. And Nauru, I don't even know where that is. It's probably an island nation someplace. Here's another resolution. Operations of UNRWA, 167 for, 5 against. Here's one that is designed to Palestinian refugees' properties and their revenues, and in there it says reaffirms that the Palestinian refugees are entitled to their property and to the income derived therefrom in conformity with the principles of equity and justice. What's that sound like? Reparations, right? It's exactly what they're pushing for reparations in the United States. 162 against. Here's one. They actually got 11 votes and 78 abstentions. Work of the Special Committee to investigate Israeli practices affecting the human rights of the Palestinian people and other Arabs in the occupied territories. 82 to 11 with 78 abstentions. Another vote, 156 to 6, Israel withdrawal from the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem and the occupied Syria Golan. And that one was 156 to 6. This one is 154 to 8. They have these resolutions, and a lot of them, they're sort of redundant from one another, but they took the time to enact 8 resolutions. And one of these ones, 154 in favor, 8 against, including the United States and Israel, and Canada, deeply regretting that 52 years have passed since the onset of the Israeli occupation and stressing the urgent need for efforts to reverse the negative trends on the ground and to restore a political horizon for advancing and accelerating meaningful negotiations aimed at the achievement of a peace agreement that will bring a complete end to the Israeli occupation that began in 1967 and the resolution of all core final status issues without exception, leading to a peaceful, just, lasting, and comprehensive solution of the Palestinian question. I can ask our retired English teacher to diagram that sentence this week and get back to us. And then this is about the occupied Syria Golan, 155-2. And in there, there's a phrase which I think is clearly designed against the United States, which recognizes Israeli sovereignty over the Golan, calls once again upon member states not to recognize any of the legislative or administrative measures and actions referred to above. In other words, don't look at them. So, resolutions that singled out or condemned Israel, 8. Resolutions that singled out or condemned all other countries in the world, 0. This is what happens over and over again. Now, I'll do this fairly quickly because it's very complex. Here is, they had an Islamic Unity Conference in Tehran this week. So guess who they were bashing at that Islamic Unity Conference? The big Satan, United States, and the little Satan, Israel. And, here's a headline from one of the Iranian newspapers. Palestinians will kick out the Zionist thugs. In the next page over, to the left, friendship with Israel is a strategic mistake. The leadership of Iran spoke. The supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, spoke. He said that we want to eliminate Israel, but though we want to eliminate Israel, we don't mean that we want to eliminate Jews. We just want to get rid of their country so the Palestinians can come in and take over the land that really belongs to them. Trying to remember if there's I have a lot of clips this week, so I'm trying to remember if I put this in this clip. I believe in this. No, this is not it. So, and he says, we're white. We want to wipe out Israel, but that we're not anti-Semitic, okay? Because we're not against Jews. We have Jews that live here in Iran, and they're happy people. By the way, based on what you'll see in just a moment, they may be the only ones. Rouhani also spoke at this, and he was talking about the world's problems. It's weak unity between Sunni and Shia Islam, and we need to unite because we have common enemies: Israel and the United States. There's also a short interview here in just a second where they ask the Iranian representative, the Hamas representative that lives in Iran, was also at this conference along with about 500 other people. And he was asked a question about, what do you think is really important? Here's the sound.
Of this conference for this year and also for the last year, it was Palestine. And this year we see that the theme is dubbed Unity in the Face of Israeli occupation, and of course for the freedom of Al-Aqsa Mosque. To discuss that more, I'm joined by Khalid Al-Qudumi, who is the representative of Hamas movement in Iran.
And that's not going to play. So anyway, the Hamas representative says, look, this is all about protecting Al-Aqsa Mosque. It's the first Qibla. It's one of the holiest sites for Islam. And so we all come here and we're all united about the fact that we have to free Palestine and free Al-Aqsa Mosque. This was an overarching theme of the conference. Very significant prophetically. Now, there are other things that are going on. Iran's having a bad week. They fund the government Hezbollah in Lebanon. People are upset in Lebanon. And it's interesting when you look at a lot of these disputes that are going on in the world, the turmoil. Chile, Ecuador had some problems. Bolivia overthrew their leader. Hong Kong, protests are going on for like 6 months now. They're getting violent. This was just the 1-year anniversary this week of the Yellow Vest in France. And those are still going on. And I mean, it's like everywhere you look, there's this turmoil. And like in Chile, they raised the subway and bus fare, and they have millions of people take to the streets in riots. And they have some economic problems in Lebanon, and they have, in a country of 4 million people, they have over 1 million people in the streets protesting, and some of these protests turn a bit violent. They're burning tires. When we were in Israel, up in the area of Samaria and Nablus, they were upset because a shooting had taken place. A Jewish settler had killed a Palestinian guy who, along with about 300 other Palestinians, were throwing rocks at his car. And I don't mean, little stone skipping or water skipping rocks. I mean, small boulders. And the guy was afraid for his life. But what they did was, everywhere we went in Nablus that day, you could see where they'd had the demonstrations the day before, and they were burning tires in vehicles. And so they're burning tires in vehicles in Lebanon. But Hezbollah has come in and said, listen, Hariri resigned. He was the prime minister. They had another guy who was supposed to come in, but now it's looking like he's not going to want to do it. And the people in Lebanon have had it. They say it's corrupt. The Iranians are corrupt. They've corrupted our society. We're tired of the sectarian division. We want this to be over with. And the response of the Iranian-backed people has been essentially take them out, crush them, kill them if you have to. So here's an interesting editorial from one of the Arab papers this morning showing that the Lebanese government is driving one direction, Hezbollah is driving another. I think it's a perfect picture of what's going on in Lebanon. Here's Al-Quds from London. And so now there are riots in Iran because they raised the price of gas. The price of gas was 10,000 rials per liter. So I did the math. 10,000 rials, it sounds like a lot of money, right? It's 24 cents US dollars. So they raised it from 10,000 rials to 15,000 rials, which means now it costs 36 cents a liter, which translates to about $1.30 per gallon. And I was sharing this on Facebook yesterday, and I think the reaction of some people was, well, wait a minute, I live in California where it's $3.50 or $4 in some places. Can I move to Iran to get cheaper gas? But what they also did was they put in a rationing thing, and if you go over 60 liters per month, that's about 13 and a half gallons, you have a fuel card and you're going to get charged 30,000 rials per liter. Now, listen, so that means it's going to cost 72 cents a liter. And it's still cheaper gas than what we pay, but the economic sanctions are having a big impact, and the people are tired of it. And so they're out in the streets. They shut down the internet in Iran. They're the yellow. They're the neutral on internet freedom in the Freedom House report. They've shut down the thing. They're burning buildings. They're burning posters of Ayatollah Khamenei across Iraq. They have the new energy policy appeared to be the latest attempt by the Islamic Republic to manage an economic crisis worsened by American sanctions that have sharply reduced oil exports. Here's another exports. That's another thing on fire. Mr. Rouhani said at a speech, and this is very interesting. I don't think this actually was in the New York Times, and I didn't see it reported anywhere else, but this, I think, shows the extent that the economic sanctions that the U.S. has put on Iran and the effect that they're having. Mr. Rouhani said in a speech a day earlier that Iran faced a deficit amounting to nearly 2/3 of its annual $45 billion budget. That's a big problem. So the sanctions are, and by the way, I think I should get a medal because I have to watch all of these. I watch this UN stuff. It's like if you want to be, if you want to make a lot of money in life, go to the UN and sell coffee. Because I don't know how those people stay awake listening to these boring speeches as people drone on. So here we have Lebanon, Iran problems causing that. In Iran, there are riots. People are running around on the streets. What you don't hear in this video is they're shouting, "Kill Khamenei, kill Khamenei." This is not something you do in Iran unless you're really ticked off, because there are big consequences to this. Here's Tahrir Square a couple weeks ago in Baghdad. Look at the people that are protesting the Iranian influence there. Here's a headline from, this is a Lebanese newspaper. The headline essentially says, look, This is a big problem, and it's going to get worse. I'm not sure what's going on here with my Sistani, who's one of the imams who heads up some of the one of the Shiite groups, and they look. You have Persian Shias, you have Arab Shias, and you have the different groups of Arab Shias and their militias in Iraq. It's a huge mess. It is a huge mess. I'll close with this, and there have been all kinds of articles this week about the satirical. New York Wall Street Journal had a great editorial the other day. This is centrifugal forces tearing the world apart. Because I mean, there are protests all over Spain. They had a chemical plant catch on fire in Normandy in France, and Macron was essentially run out of town when he showed up to try to, act like he was going to help people. I'm just telling you, there is an incredible, when I say situation critical, I don't think I'm overstating the cases, that there is a lot of tension in the world. You may have noticed there's sort of a political tension in the United States right now. I haven't even talked about that. I did see a Democratic congressman this week who said that, yeah, it's hearsay, but boy, hearsay can be the best evidence of all. And the problem is we live in different realities. We live in a reality. I live in a reality. These idiots don't. I apologize to idiots if I offend. I mean, the whole thing is insane. And people are giving testimony about things that they didn't even know about. There are exceptions to the hearsay rule. None of them apply to this stuff here. So Daniel Pipes has a great article, and he has 8 things that the Middle East in flux, 8 trends. Now, some of it I don't agree with. He says, the radical Islamists are really on the outs. I don't agree with that. I think he's a little bit too kind in making that distinction. But with that, he's pretty good, pretty thoughtful person, good writer, good analyst. I'm not saying we should throw him under the bus or whatever, because I disagree with him on that. But he does make some very good points. I'll just share a couple of them. There are 8. One of them is this. Here's some of the things that are causing the state of flux in the Middle East. Water. Remember we talked about Turkey and the way they use water? Water replaces petroleum as the key liquid. Oil and gas still provide nearly 60% of the world's energy, but this number is declining, and even the wealthiest oil producers are feeling the pinch. Gulf Coast Council states look to new taxes as oil revenues remain weak. That's a headline that you can see in papers around there. Contrarily, tensions over water are becoming a major source of international tensions. Turkey versus Syria, Ethiopia versus Egypt, and a driving force of domestic change, such as the Syrian revolt of 2011. It is also a potential cause of massive migration. Agriculture predicts that water shortages, a former Iranian minister of agriculture predicts that water shortages will force up to 70% of the Iranian population, or 57 million Iranians, to immigrate someplace else. Can you imagine? Syria just about collapsed Europe. Probably has, effectively. And Syria only had 21 million people. Iran has over 80 million. And then you have the problems between Turkey and Syria over water, and also it mentioned Ethiopia and Egypt. Egypt has close to, I think, 90 million people. They're dependent on the Nile. And this is the Grand Renaissance Dam that's being built on, I believe it's the Blue Nile branch in Ethiopia, near the headwaters of the Nile. Now, you see the construction crane down here. I'm not sure why my slide is taking up too much space, but Anyway, there's a construction crane down there. Oh, that's because somebody zoomed in. See the crane down there? That gives you some idea of the size of this dam, which is they're now ready to start filling. And so what happened in Syria and Iraq, when Turkey filled those dams, is going to happen to Egypt. And I think there's some prophecies that may be directly related to this. This is a big problem. In fact, Foreign Policy has an article just the other day, River of the Dam, Ethiopia's continued efforts to dam the Nile end in war with Egypt. Here's how to stop that from happening. So I talked a lot about dams today. I could have called this the dam update, I guess. DAM, please. Any complaints, go to Pastor Steve. He can handle those. So there's just a tremendous amount of things that are happening throughout this. Arab youth has a lot of problems with unemployment, that type of thing. So you might get a hold of Daniel Pipe's article in the, it was either Friday or today in the Jerusalem Post. There is a lot of things that are going on. This is a very turbulent world. I don't think I'm overstating when I say that the situation is, if it's not critical, it's becoming critical in many, many places. But some of the things you see is you see wars, rumors of wars, you see pestilence, you see days of Lot, and you see nations lining up against Israel. All of these things are fit directly into Bible prophecy. So it is an exciting time to be alive. I know how it works out in the end. It works out pretty good. But, there's some turmoil coming. It could be a very bumpy ride. But God is in control. And we have our faith and prayer, and just pray that we have a chance to tell people about the gospel of Jesus Christ, because that is, as I mentioned earlier, secular atheists are saying the decline of Christianity is bad for the world. It's crazy. So let's pray. Father, thanks so much for your word. Thank you for the guidance that you give us. Lord, pray that you'll bless us this week and give us an opportunities, and to take the courage to take advantage of those opportunities to share the glorious gospel of Jesus Christ. In Jesus' name, amen.